The Santa Barbara campus of the University of California is known not only for its unsurpassed physical beauty and environmental setting, but more importantly for its many undergraduate and graduate research programs in such diverse fields as history, marine biology, physics, and Portuguese and Brazilian studies. For example, the National Science Foundation selected the Santa Barbara campus for the location of a National Institute of Theoretical Physics with a grant of $1 million a year for 5 years. Some of the world's leading scientists, including a Nobel laureate theoretical physicist, are now working with this institute. In addition, in 1979, one of the first exchange programs of any American university was formalized with the People's Republic of China, in which 25 scholars and graduate students from the Academia Sinica would study at UC Santa Barbara during the 79-80 academic year. During the same time period, the prestigious Center for the Study of Democratic Institutions became an integral part of the campus scholarly community at UC Santa Barbara. Finally, until June of 1978, the Santa Barbara campus was the home of the most distinguished scholar-poet in Portuguese, Jorge de Sena. Hello, I'm Dr. Frederick G. Williams of the Department of Spanish and Portuguese at the University of California, Santa Barbara. Not long after the death of Jorge de Sena, the University of California at Santa Barbara created the Jorge de Sena Memorial Center for Portuguese Studies. Financed by a generous grant of $350,000 from the Calouste Gulbenkian Foundation of Lisbon, Portugal, which incidentally is the third largest in Europe, the center will complement the existing programs for the BA, MA, and PhD that the department has. Students may emphasize Portuguese and Brazilian studies in preparation for careers at the university level, for bilingual education, for business, for government service, and innumerable other possibilities. In addition, students can take advantage of the Education Abroad program, which is centered at the UC Santa Barbara campus. A student can study, for example, at the São Paulo, Brazil Center for a year, or in Lisbon, Portugal, the University of Lisbon, or at the University of Coimbra in Portugal for the summer sessions. A student has the option of competing for a number of different financial packages, scholarships, and grants that are provided by the Calouste Gulbenkian Foundation, by the Luso-American Education Foundation of California, by the Instituto de Cultura of Portugal, and by the Jorge de Sena Memorial Foundation. These grants and scholarships are available for studies year-round here at the Santa Barbara campus, or for the overseas program in Lisbon in Portugal, and especially for the Summer Institute in Portuguese held here at the University of California, Santa Barbara campus. Once a student has been accepted to the department, he or she can take advantage of the wide diversity of interests and research methodologies symbolized by the faculty of the Portuguese and Brazilian program. Our senior professor is Maria de Lourdes Belchor Pontes, who received her PhD from the University of Lisbon and is a visiting professor with our department. She is primarily interested in Portuguese literature and culture with an emphasis on the 16th and 17th centuries and the 20th century. Professor Enrique Martinez Lopes received his PhD from the University of Madrid, but he lived for several years in Brazil, where he was on the faculty of 2 universities. There he became fascinated by colonial Brazilian literature and contemporary Brazilian drama. Associate Professor Harvey L. Scherer, a PhD from the University of California, Los Angeles, deals with both medieval Portuguese language and literature, while trying also to maintain his sanity as chairman of the department. Arnaldo Saraiva, who received his licenciado in Filologia Românica from the University of Lisbon, is a lecturer with the Instituto de Cultura Portuguesa. Professor Saraiva teaches Portuguese and Brazilian language, literature, and culture. Assistant Professor Mary Gay Doman, who received her doctorate from the University of Wisconsin in Madison, teaches and conducts research in the Portuguese language and synchronic linguistics. I, as with Professor Doman, also received my PhD from the University of Wisconsin, Madison, and I'm an associate professor with the department. My major interests lie in Portuguese and Brazilian language, literature, and culture, especially the Portuguese community here in California.
Felicidade. A felicidade sentava-se todos os dias no peitoril da janela. Tinha feições de menino inconsolável. Um menino impúber, ainda sem amor para ninguém, gostando apenas de demorar as mãos ou de roçar lentamente o cabelo pelas faces humanas. E como menino que era, achava grande mistério no seu próprio nome.
In June of 1978, both the Department of Spanish and Portuguese and Comparative Literature were saddened by the death of their chairman, the most distinguished scholar-poet in Portuguese, Jorge de Sena. Born in Lisbon in 1919, Sena left Portugal in a successful civil engineering career in 1959 to accept a teaching position in literary theory at the University of São Paulo, Brazil. While there, he completed his PhD in literary theory. He then accepted a full professorship at the University of Wisconsin in 1965. In 1970, Jorge de Sena accepted an invitation to teach, and later acted as chairman of the Departments of Spanish and Portuguese and Comparative Literature at the University of California, Santa Barbara. It was here, both on campus and at his residence at 939 Randolph Road, that Jorge de Sena lived and worked until his death. I recently paid a visit to the residence of the late Jorge de Sena to talk with his wife and lifelong companion, Maria Messia de Sena. We talked about his life and work. I'm always amazed at the sheer size of this library. Do you have some idea of the number of books?
Oh, about 20,000 maybe.
20,000. Are they arranged according to some criteria?
Yes, of course.
Or?
My husband was very picky about that. He had the books separated in literatures and in Portuguese literature by subjects, very rigorously. And each literature was arranged in chronology.
And what different languages were represented there?
German, Spanish, Portuguese, of course, English, Hungary, Russia, Italian, French, of course.
And of those books, what number was produced by your husband?
I think around 80 titles, maybe 80 titles, not counting hundreds of articles.
Could you tell us where your husband did most of his work? Was it at home? Or
of course, at home. Yeah, home was his office. He was at the university just when he needed to be, or in another place.
How about a typical day in his life? What was his schedule?
Well, typical days would be Saturdays and Sundays. Getting up at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning and working until noon, and then just a break to have lunch, and then working until 8, and then another break to have dinner, and working until midnight. And sometimes you say, I'm going to have the pleasure of a correspondence, and then you would be writing letters for hours and hours and hours. And there was a kind of a break in his work.
Tremendous. We know something of the academic side of Jorge de Sena's, but could you tell us, if you would, something of the personal side? How did these two seemingly incompatible things work? That is, a family and home with 9 children, and his academic pursuits
Well,
and his professional pursuits?
he was, he liked children. He was a very domestic man, but very, very domestic man. But the house was my hobby and my my job. Then he would only know the side effects of the house. Is why he could work full time, and he knew that, and he said that in an interview more than once.
You acted as his amanuensis.
Yeah, as wife and as secretary as far as I could, and bumper for everything.
Critic too, I would assume.
Yeah, well, I would say I was the media. If I don't understand, nobody else will. Then I would read everything, and he could accept or not my remarks. But I would read and tell, well, I understand, I don't, or I don't like.
Georges de Sena had a strong belief that students best learn a foreign language if they can be totally immersed not only in the grammar and syntax, but in the cultural heritage of that language as well. To sit in a booth provides a student with vocabulary and syntax, but it can't create the special feelings or ideas behind that language, which is the most important dimension, for one cannot learn a language without actually learning the culture of a people, actually an entirely new way to perceive the universe. Well, short of actually living in Brazil or Portugal, how could a student achieve this kind of language study? The answer came in 1973 with the creation of the Summer Institute in Portuguese, where students and Portuguese professors could come together for intensive language and literature and culture training. The most important facet of this institute was the creation of the Portuguese Language House, where for 6 weeks the students would live in this house adjacent to the campus in Isla Vista. The opening of the 7th Annual Portuguese Institute was held June 21st, 1979. It was at this meeting that students met the Institute's staff and learned of the schedule and program. One of those introduced was co-director Dr. Eduardo Diaz from UCLA. He was one of the original founders of the Summer Institute and a leading member of the Portuguese community in California.
Well, I must strongly protest, not the fact that you called me the granddad, but some other things. José and Guida and Isabel told all the beautiful and pleasant things about the Portuguese house, and I'm stuck with the don't and the unpleasant things. It's my mission today to tell you what you cannot do in the Portuguese house. I think José already mentioned that due to some insurance considerations, we cannot imbibe anything stronger than Dr. Pepper at the Portuguese house. I'm not too happy with this restriction, but it's the way of life. Also, there are other restrictions. For instance, I would strongly urge you not to smoke any non-indigenous plants at the Portuguese house. Also not to make any noise after 10 o'clock. Except, of course, on these happy occasions when you have a samba party or a Carnaval Brasileiro or something like that. But please remember that this is a very intensive course. Our fellow students must devote some time, I hope they devote a lot of time, to their homework. And so please, after 10 o'clock, no radios blaring, no bossa nova singing or something like that. Also, I'd like to announce that on July 19th and 20th, we'll have a mini colloquium on Portuguese and Brazilian culture. We'll get some speakers here. They'll make some short presentations, about 20 minutes, and then these presentations will be followed by a 10-minute question and answer period.
We also hope to have some more films during these occasions. And I'm trying to persuade Guida to cook us a Portuguese meal for Thursday and a Brazilian meal for Friday. I'm sure she would gladly comply with our requests.
I feel
Other members of the staff were also introduced. Leland Geyer, the first PhD from UCSB, taught beginning language.
I'll step off the.
I really have nothing
Isabel
to say
Gicena
except,
taught
you don't really have to
second-year
pray for
language.
rain. You know, just moderately bad weather will do.
Anne
I will
Terlinden
be teaching Portuguese
taught
also for
first-year
Quinto campus,
Portuguese.
and I welcome you very warmly.
Lasse Tihonen also taught first-year Portuguese.
8 to 9, I like to see your smiling faces or droopy eyes in the lab.
Karen Correa was the secretary of our Portuguese Institute.
Campus. Are there any questions?
Bud Bridgers was the director of UCSB Language Labs.
Program, and each year it gets better and better.
Fernando Martinho taught third-year Portuguese. Harvey Scher is the department chairman.
So again, I welcome you to the Seventh Annual Institute. Thank you.
Maria de Lourdes Belchor is our senior professor in Portuguese.
Dou-me como exemplar de português quase perfeito.
Arnaldo Saraiva is our lecturer from the Instituto de Cultura.
Saber se há possibilidade de receber aqueles filmes?
Sim.
Margarida Ávila is our cook.
I will.
José Gonçalves was the director of the Portuguese House, and he described the benefits of living at the house during this opening meeting.
Institute in Portuguese. If the offer made by Guida about the cooking did not convince you to come and participate in our house, I'd like to make some proposals that you won't resist. We have a lot more interesting things than just food. Guida's food is excellent, so please come and savor it. But we want you to all feel that the Portuguese house is not just a house that you come occasionally and indeed that you're not coerced. I'll be keeping a close watch on those people who come to the house, and I'll just be slipping some notes. And I do a little spying on the side, you see, to make up the difference in pay. But the Portuguese house, we want you to feel that it's really a lab dimension to the language. It is the live laboratory that we have here. It is, in a sense, a little Luso-Brazilian, et cetera, world that we have there from both cultural point of view as well as a linguistic point of view. And yes, the linguistic is very important. The first week, we're going to admit some of the...
barbarous language.
Yes, thank you for that adjective, Dr. Williams, that's so well put. After the second week on, there will be no exception made, and I must tell you from past experience that we dealt rather harshly with our victims. I'm sorry, I mean our students. Excuse me. Keeps slipping the tongue here, you know. In keeping with the international community spirit, we really observe most human rights issues. We have drastically cut down on the racks and torture machineries we used to use before.
We're being videotaped, that's why.
Trying to re-educate the people, right, how to follow the good examples of our house. But there are some still that insist on drinking strange potions and the premises of the house, speaking in these languages no one seems to understand. I mean, it's really embarrassing, right, to put us through after what we're trying to do. So actually, we hope that all of you will come and join the Portuguese house. We have many activities like parties, a lot of parties. But we do always with a flavor. Brazilian party, we have carnival, we try to do it in very many versions. We have Cape Verdean night, which is a tradition that we have with food and music and otherwise. We have films, many films, slides, talks. We have a newspaper we publish, and which has a very interesting title called Folhas de Couve. And you will soon learn what it means by when your name comes out there. And we hope you participate also by writing that, because we just don't write it for you. It's going to be your Portuguese house, okay? So in closing then, I would like to just say that I really, on behalf of all the people in the Institute, I hope that you make full use of the house, because it's not just an appendage to the program. it's in fact a very important element, because if you want to practice your Portuguese, you might feel inhibited in the classroom because you're being really tested. But in the Portuguese house, you could make the mistakes. We'll laugh. It's okay.
But in the Portuguese house, you can make mistakes. We'll laugh. That's okay. Maybe that's the genius of the Portuguese Institute, the fact that students have to make perhaps 5,000 mistakes before they learn the language, but they make those mistakes, or they learn that language in an atmosphere of caring students and professors. While residency for those enrolled in the Summer Institute is not required at the house, it does attract the majority of the Institute participants. For a very reasonable fee, students receive room and board, and the latter being dominated by Portuguese and Brazilian dishes. The 1979 Portuguese house featured a talented Azorean by the name of Margarita Avila, who demonstrated to her students how the cuisine of a country can reflect a people's culture and a way of life as much as a word pattern can. Not only does a student get the chance to taste the food eaten by the cultures he's studying, but he also has the opportunity to take part in its preparation, particularly as featured on specialty nights, where certain dishes are highlighted from such areas as mainland Portugal, the Azores, Madeira, Cape Verde, and Brazil. When the meals are finally served, it is in buffet style with instructors, students, and guests eating in a large dining room area. It is here in the eating of food and in the conversation in Portuguese during the meal that students can truly appreciate both the language and its various cultural manifestations. The Portuguese house offers interaction between students and faculty not only in daily living routines like eating, but also in recreational pursuits such as folk dancing and music. Although the house might not offer players of international caliber in soccer, the mere playing of the game offers another mode of interaction between the Institute's participants, another non-classroom experience that still projects the culture and hence the language of Portugal and Brazil. Needless to say, traditional forms of studying Portuguese still play a fundamental role in the Summer Institute, as students meet daily in intensive course instruction. From Portuguese 10, which offers the students an intensive beginning examination of the language, to courses in literature and culture, including Portuguese 596, which allows for graduate-level directed reading and research. Institute participants are given the opportunity of gaining invaluable knowledge of Portuguese in a very short time. It must be emphasized that intensive work of this nature does require a lot of time and hard study. Students can expect to spend several hours per day in classroom, language labs, and independent study. In conjunction with the academic program of the Institute, various conferences, panel discussions, colloquia are held during the 6 weeks. It is at these meetings that students and professors are able to not only take part in scholarly discussions, but also to gain greater understanding of each other in the get-togethers immediately following such sessions. One of the principal guests at the 7th Annual Institute was Dr. José Blanco, from the Gulbenkian Foundation, Lisbon, Portugal. Dr. Blanco was able to experience firsthand the warmth and joy found at the Summer Institute during the sessions he attended. He was particularly impressed with the impact that the Portuguese Summer House had had on the acquisition of Portuguese by the student participants.
Eu vou falar em português, porque não me quero arriscar a esta pena terrível que está aqui determinada. A pessoa é fuzilada e a seguir tem uma semana de trabalhos forçados.
Senhoras e senhores, temos o prazer de ter hoje no nosso meeting da nossa Cultural Organization de divulgação do chouriço e de port wine, uma pessoa que dá muita honra para nós de o ter no meio da nossa organização esta noite. E é com muito prazer que eu anuncio que ele vai ser o guest speaker desta sessão. O nosso discursador, o senhor, escusem, eu vou ler porque é um nome muito comprido e, oh God, e o senhor professor Carlos Renato de Zambuja, Sabugal, Saavedra, Carvalho e Silva Mendes e Portela.
One way in which the traditional study of Portuguese and the philosophy of the Portuguese house are combined is through the presentation of plays written by such noted playwrights as Gil Vicente and João Cabral de Melo Neto, and plays written by the students themselves during the final days of the Institute. Presented totally in Portuguese, these plays offer the student an opportunity of testing his knowledge of the language, as well as having a good time. The main reason for the existence of the Summer Institute in